The next item is the appointment of board committees by board president per policy 2:150. Any discussions on it? Plus, we also have superintendent advisory councils underneath that, so.
Well, the one thing is I think we need to clarify what the policy actually says. It says the board may adopt committees, and if there are committees, the president chooses who the members are.
And I remember when we started 4 years ago that Jim Arsenic, the president at that time period, appointed us to boards.
Yeah, but the board would vote on what committees we want to have.
There are no committees right now.
Right.
There are no committees right now.
So
Right.
first we'd have to decide if we're going to have committees and choose which they are.
So right now, per Todd, these were the committees that, based on 2:15, was policy, personnel, finance, facilities, curriculum, parent-teacher advisory, discipline, and behavioral interventions.
Those are the standing committees based on policy, board policy 2:150.
Those are the ones that are available, but we decided not to set the committees up, so there
Correct.
are no committees.
That's right. So the board itself has a choice either to go with board committees or go with advisory council committees.
No, the board can't choose to go with advisory committees. The superintendent councils are not board committees, it's not board action. The board can choose to have committees. We don't have to have all of these. The board can say, well, we want a finance and facility, and then everything else would go into the cow. The board can have all of them, or some of them, or none of them. So the discussion should be among us. This is our business meeting. Would we like to embrace a model as that would have committees so we can discuss in public things that are important to the school and the community?
I thought my reading of Todd's here, someone can, correct me, but I thought it's like basically we should do one or the other.
Well, you can do both, actually. And Todd's, in the last sentence in that document, Todd specifically says, we cannot assign anybody, the board cannot direct anybody to a superintendent advisory council. Absolutely, that would be a violation. But we can have both. If we had a finance and facilities, those are big committees. Typically, many districts will have that. It's not unlikely that the superintendent would also have a facilities advisory council for issues when he needs to have two people to brainstorm and talk. There's nothing to preclude the superintendent to having any number of advisory councils. The superintendent is not limited to these advisory councils. He can have advisory councils on any issue he has. He or she has, but in our case, it's a he.
Any other discussion?
Would you like board committees?
Well, I think there's three committees that I think would behoove us. Finance, facilities, and curriculum.
What about policy and personnel?
Well, you could choose to put those in the cow, or you could have them all. But I think since we're talking about facilities, we have major issues. We have the issues with the pool, we have the tennis courts, we have parking, we have the stadium, we have the life safety. It could help us, it should be important for us to have that discussion in public. Curriculum, we need to start talking about one-to-one or technology or where do we want to go in the future, the English proposal, the new curriculum proposal, the core model that's coming out. There are many things happening in curriculum that would probably be worthwhile for us to have those discussions in public.
Well, we actually do have these discussions in public at the committee of the whole meeting. So I think you either have the committee of the whole structure or you have these separate meetings. I much prefer to do the committee of the whole. And it's not, when we're attending Kevin's councils, that's really not board work, that's superintendent work. We are there basically to listen and to bring to the board and reinforce, what Kevin discussed at this meeting. It's really,
But
That's
if
why
you
the
bring it
committee-
to the board, then it's a violation.
no, it's not.
I have to bring it to the board.
Kevin has to bring it. You're just there advising him. So if Kevin says, the stadium, or what do I do with it? Give me some ideas. Give me direction. And you're an advisor. Well, you would want to talk to the past architect. You'd want to talk to these people. Those are you act as an advisor. We can't report out on that. That's a committee.
Forgive my ignorance, Laura. How would it be different if we set up these committees from what we're doing now in the committee of the whole?
Well,
As
some
an effect.
schools actually use the committee of the whole, and they designate which committees will present. Committees don't have to present or meet every month.
Right.
In fact, only in the last 2 years have you had such a set schedule. For 4 years while I was on the board, you only voted on the regular business meeting, and at each meeting, it was determined whether a meeting was necessary and which meetings were necessary. So there are many models in the over 800 districts in this fair state.
But I'm just asking, how do you see it functioning differently than what we've got now?
Well, they're geared on a topic, and they're systematic. So facilities, there are several issues that we would probably want to follow, and the community would want to say, all right, what's the update on that? Where are we going with that? The life safety, the stadium, the tennis courts, the pool. We have a lot of issues, and those are ongoing conversations.
Well, how is it different?
But don't we
from-
do
how's
that
it
in the
different?
committee of the whole meeting?
How's it different? You haven't answered that.
I'll answer how it's different, in my opinion, if you don't mind. Kevin would have to, if he wanted to have the councils continue that, he would have to pick who the members are without the input of any of the board members. And then there couldn't be more than 2. And then he would have to decide how to digest whatever he got out of that group and discuss it with the board without the other members embellishing it. If we had committees, we would have to notice the committees, they would be open to the public, and the public would be allowed to come. We could or not decide or not to allow, like, public comment in there. And then you'd still have a similar situation where, in that instance, the committee members, though, then could come and discuss those in the committee of the whole. So, like, let's say we had a policy committee, and Matt and I are in the policy committee, we would, we would be the 2 members. Probably people would come to the meeting, maybe they would, and hear what it is, and then we bring it up to the committee of the whole, and we would then be able to share why we decided, let's adopt this policy, let's not adopt that policy. The one advantage is what Jim Lindahl suggested here, and I have heard from other members, is they feel that it helps show that we're more transparent. I personally question how many people are going to come to a 7:15 in the morning meeting when we're talking about policies, but, it has that alternative to post it, make it available to the public, and then the board members be able to share what they discussed in that meeting at the committee of the whole.
Why, I don't quite understand why we're not doing that now, Tim, because that's exactly what we're doing now at the committee of the whole. We discuss things in facilities. People ask questions like, well, what did you guys talk about? Well, I want to hear from the other board members. There's nothing illegal for me to talk about that said, well, we think this is a good
We got new
idea.
advice from our attorney about whether the board members can share their thoughts. on
Where's
those.
that? I don't
It's
see
the
it.
last sentence of the letter.
I don't see it. Can you please tell me?
Does
I don't
anybody
read
have
it
it? I
that
could
way.
show it to you.
I don't read it that way at all. I don't see how we're doing anything wrong with the current situation. In fact, it becomes less transparent, in my opinion, if you have like 2 board members doing something on their own, and then all of a sudden coming and saying, okay,
me see.
we want to do this, whereas I
So-
much prefer
I-
Kevin to take the lead.
Could I ask a question that I'm trying to ponder here between an advisory versus a board committee? By having a board committee, doesn't that wind up crossing a line kind of into the management side of the district? Because now it's the board's committee, and the board committee can now, the 2 of them can start, people can start talking and driving policy to some degree, as opposed to 2 people sitting with a superintendent and listening to what he is directing, what he's perceiving, what he wants done.
No,
To me, it crosses the line.
Here's what happened. So the first 2 years we were on board, Mike was on finance, I got appointed to facilities. That's when we started the construction, we were in the final phase of the construction project. So we as a committee met every 2 weeks at the trailers. And all they did was review key items on the construction project as they were proceeding. So here, we got this is what the schedule is, this is what the finances look like. These are the bills coming up for the board for that meeting. Here are some issues we're seeing right now. We don't see supports under this one part of the building. We're seeing walls, need support, being able to identify issues that they're seeing right now. At the board meeting, we then, the facilities committee was on that and talked about, okay, tonight before you're gonna have, bills that you're gonna be asked to pay for, and there are these bills for this part of the project and that. This is, where we're at on progress for the construction project. We are targeting to open at this date, we're bringing these people in, all that stuff like that, and being able to update and work from there. That committee started working together and then provided updates to it. At that point, too, the board members could say, hey, I got an issue with this, or I have a question about this, what's happening with this? So that's what happened the first 2 years. Now, this last 2 years, they went to an advisory council where the superintendent picked and had his thing. All it was a different name, but here's what happened is you had 2 board members still, we had 2 board members. The superintendent is the one that led that agenda, saying, here, this is the issues I have, this is what I want to do from that, and got the feedback. And said, hey, this is what we need to do, what do you think about this? And then at the committee of the whole meeting, because we didn't have committee of the holes back then, it was brought up, his report saying, okay, I had superintendent's advisory council, this is what was brought up. You board members have anything to add to it? This is what we want to bring to the board for a vote or anything. Just giving updates. I got a problem with the life safety, we need to have a life safety, what are we going to do, here's the options we're going to work at and going from there. And I'm going to come to the board with a request for funding for life safety. So that's the way it was from there.
And I think you mentioned that the committee would have 3 people.
The committee would have 3 or more, because then they're open. The way the committees,
When you
don't have to
spoke,
have-
you
you don't
said
have
it
to
would
have
have
3.
2 people and it would be posted.
Well-
Yeah, you'd have to post it and have to be open.
you have to
And
post.
any of the other board members could come then.
Any of the board members, the way we've used committees in the past, for decades, the policy hadn't changed. And so we had a policy committee, and we invited the Illinois Association of School Boards to come in, and we took the old book, and they walked through with us. And we were open, and there would be, and it was in the evening, and we did this routinely through the book, and the consultant would say, you don't need all of what's in your policy. You have procedure here. My advice is you do this. And then among the committee members that were there would be discussion. And the community could hear that discussion about where we were going to drive the new policy. That was a long process, about 6 months, and you have that product now. When we did the referendum, we had a facilities committee, and members would come. You don't have to come to all of them, but you had input from all the committee members, and then people would come in, the consultants, and they'd present, and then we would have different speakers come in. We also gave a survey to the instructors, the teachers, what are your needs in the school? And then those were brought up and discussed in public. So when our community is saying, I wonder if they asked the teachers what kind of space they need, or I wonder if they've thought about this. The community has the opportunity to hear us talk about these things and say, yes, they did ask that. They asked that in the committee, and the response was this.
Well, they can still do it now, Laura, at the committee of the whole. You still haven't answered my question of why it's different. And Tim, you say, when we're doing committee of the whole now, as board, we're on the facilities council. We're not reporting directly to the board, he is. We're just like, if someone wants to ask our opinion or something, then I think that's reasonable, but we're not reporting directly to the board.
And
So,
so,
but Laura, as you described it, that's exactly what the committee of the whole meeting is. We're bantering about, for example, curriculum.
yeah,
You raised a lot of points to the administration, in public, on TV, not at 7:15 in the morning.
Well, not all committees have to be in the morning. You set your committees when you want them to be. But a committee is more focused. When you have a committee of the whole, you might have one point. And you don't have to have your committees every month. But if you're starting to talk about significant issues, then you could address it in depth.
Tim, let you know that the committees that we were appointed to 4 years ago, there was 2 board members on the committee.
And
Yeah. You
and
don't
I
have to have
recall
3,
them
yeah.
ever being posted.
You know, and
Well, they-
if we went to where they posted, a board member could come if he wants to.
Right.
And the other key thing about it too is like facilities, where if we were going through the construction project, yeah, we were meeting every 2 weeks. But after we got done with that, it spanned out more when it was needed, so.
Well, my only, two things, and then I'd like to, if you don't mind, see what Kevin thinks. But the first thing is, Jim's not the only one who's questioned whether we kind of are secretive by having these. Whether we talk about them at the cow or not, we talked about amongst our own group of, if we're filtering, that, you know, filtering information out of what happens at the councils is, you know, making decisions by omission, right? So that's what, you know, the concern is.
Do you think we do that? Do you have an example where we've done that?
Well, I think we all do it.
Give me an example where we've done that.
I mean, we haven't told every reason we decided not to adopt or not adopt a change in the policy. You know, we haven't talked to every discussioner in the facilities. We haven't, you know, we tried to share all the information, but we certainly don't recapture the whole discussion that took place in an hour-long meeting. So, I mean, I'm not saying people are doing it maliciously. I'm saying that it just is the nature of doing it that way. And the second one is, and again, I mean, you know, Ed took a look, maybe see what he thinks, but, you know, John, I'm reading, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I read what Todd's advising this time is, you know, we kind of are precluded from sharing what we would discuss in the council at the board meeting if we do that, that type of discussion, so. If you don't mind, I'd like to see what Kevin thinks about it.
I mean, if we have to have Todd, my point's this, is it broken or not? Is it broken? I don't think it's broken. And what you're going to do is basically, we shouldn't be having these board committees and the committee of the whole at the same time. I mean, you're just adding extra committees. You're not increasing transparency, you're decreasing it.
So Kevin? Yeah. Thanks for putting.
They're called board committees because they're
What
board
did Dad
committees.
say about choppy waters?
Yeah, this is a chap. Listen, I work for the board. If the board wants to do committees, they could do committees. I don't think it's broken right now. I think that thorough discussions are occurring at the committee of the whole. I did review everything that we're currently doing with legal counsel, showed them how our agenda is written, that it specifically says superintendent report, superintendent advisory committee update, and all of them are listed every month, and every time there's a committee of the whole meeting for me to provide an update and say whether or not I met and what were the general points that were talked about. In regards to board committees, the way I interpreted his letter is the board can choose either one, or they can do both. If I basically, it provides me the flexibility, even if we have a committee and I want to talk to 2 other board members on facilities, I have that flexibility to do that. So, the thing that that Todd didn't point out is that it should be, if we do advisory councils, the superintendent should pick who he wants to work with and lead the discussion at the committee of the whole. He also did reference that a majority of the districts he serves that do committees only do 1 meeting a month. And he said that you have to, one of the things that does normally happen is that those committee meetings, they're transparency, but the 4 or 5 other board members that don't show up then want to ask all their questions at the public meeting and drag out the board meeting because they couldn't attend the time of the committee meeting and they still want to ask questions and be informed. So, you know, he thought the same thing. Well, if you do committees, you should be able to go to 1 meeting a month. I don't know if we're at that point where the board can work through 2 or 3 or if they want to attend other meetings. I talked to some superintendents. They do their committee meetings in the morning, just like they would do their advisory councils. They're open to the public. If people want to make comments, they defer them to the public board meeting so that public citizen comments are being heard by all 7 board members at an allocated time. And then most of them do 1 meeting a month. Some people follow different structures. So is the current format broken? I don't think it is. But if the board decides tonight that they want to do committees, I would think it's not going to change much from what we're already following, except that the door would be open and that the meeting would be posted. That's my personal take.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think another point when we have a committee is a committee is driven by the board. In a superintendent advisory council, the superintendent has a question and needs counselors to help him answer that question. So we have to ask what our need is. When it comes to facilities, it's the board's job to maintain the facilities, to appropriate the funds, and to approve the work that needs to be done. So the board should be driving that work. And then
You could say
as,
that about anything, Laura. You could say that about anything.
well, then the board should be determining.
So
You
you
wanna
say
run
we
the
should be
school.
managing
You should be
the
running the
facilities?
school. Yeah.
Or we should be governing to make sure that the managers we put in place have the right direction from us?
Well, it shouldn't be the superintendent who prioritizes what jobs we do. It should be the board that prioritizes what jobs get done with the input of the community, who will pay for it through their tax dollars.
But as a person that we gave over the reins to the district, we listen to the presentation, we make the decision whether we approve it or say no. We'd rather be focusing this way as opposed to that way. We're going to make a decision not to spend money on a tennis court, or yes, we will spend money on a tennis court. We will, but the presentation and the driver of it is the manager of it. We're governing to make sure that the district is on the right path.
But the community wants to hear that discussion.
And we do that in the committee of the whole.
About the tennis, well, apparently we didn't, because when we were talking about the tennis courts, we had a community member say, I don't know what happens in those council meetings, but they're secret and we don't know what you talk about.
Okay, that's anecdotal.
Well,
Matt, can
it
we?
happened on TV, we can replay it.
Well, it's
But here's-
anecdotal.
It's just like watching the political
And
analysts
did
talk
we
to
not
each
then
other.
spend 2 hours flushing everything out on the committee of the whole? Bantering about back and forth in the tennis court?
We don't always.
Did we or did we not?
No, we don't always
didn't?
bring up all the issues that are pending with the tennis courts. We don't have experience talking about all the issues of the school in public.
I think we looked at all the options, and if
We
you've been
don't
thinking.
have good experience doing that.
Well, I think
Then
we did on this one.
but you're expecting us to micromanage when we don't have the experience. That's what's Kevin's job, to run the school and get, non-board members' advice as he sees fit. So you don't make any sense.
All right, so given that, because we can keep this discussion going along, so either a motion to establish the board committees or a motion to establish the, keep the superintendent's advisory
I
council?
don't think we can make a motion on the supervisor's advisory council
Right.
based on the advice we got. That's his
Well,
decision. whether he
directionally, we
wants to
can
do it.
give them what our board consensus is. Would that be all right with you?
No, we can't decide to have superintendent councils. That is a violation.
How's
We
that
can
violation?
decide whether we have board committees or not,
All right,
right?
let's do that.
That's what we
Okay.
can decide
All
on.
right, that's fair.
All right,
Can I just add one thing? When we got to the point about the graduation requirements, I clearly stated I would prefer that we do it in public and have more input and open it. I'm clearly telling you, like, when we get deeper into life safety, on the funding and some of those issues, we can always do a ad hoc like we have done
yeah.
in the past, because there are some things that will be coming up that we should do in the public and get public input, or at least open to the public.
Can I make one comment, though? And again, I told you, I question whether making a change really provides additional transparency, because I don't think a lot of people are going to come to the meetings. But I do still have a concern that I hear people say that they feel that we're not approachable, we say we're transparent, we put things on the website, but when we have discussions, we don't fully engage, vet out all the issues for the public to know, and that we don't allow a methodology for members of the public to approach us and bring issues to us. I mean, we do have a public comment period, but there's often, in the majority of them, there's no follow-up from the board to say whether we're addressing the issues or not. So, again, I'm not convinced, my support for the committee is because Kevin doesn't think it would have a great impact, and it would, at least to some portion of our community, feel like we're being transparent. But I'd like to raise it to another level that, I hear people say, and I don't know if other people do, that they don't really feel that we're approachable and we're transparent and we share information. So if this isn't a way to move to that, I'd at least like to get something out there at a future meeting with our communication plan or something to say, how can we make sure that we are approachable and that the community has the ability and the opportunity to see our full engagement and have some recourse to be able to provide information to us.
Well, we give them 4 times a month to be able to give visitors comments. We tape our committee of the whole in the board meeting where there is discussion on this. The advisory councils, if they want to come to them, I don't think that, going with a new setup would, they could listen in what's going on here. I know that you
Not
talk.
on an advisory council.
Not on advisory council, but what I'm saying right now is, you may hear that, I don't hear that.
Well,
And-
there is, I'm sorry, Ed.
I was just going to say, I would fully support exploring that further. I think it's a good idea. I just don't know that the committees are the way to go.
That's fine.
We don't have to establish them tonight either,
Right.
do we?
Maybe it's the 3-day notice, and they see that X is on the agenda in the committee of the whole, and maybe that's the issue. I don't know if there's somewhere we can give further, like you came up with the organizational calendar saying, this month we're doing, you're attacking, personnel, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what we can do, but maybe there's something, if the community's out there telling us what we can do, let's open our ears and listen to it.
Well, I think that the tennis court thing's a prime example. The issue was brought up, we listened to it, and we responded to it. I don't think there was any kind of lack of transparency there at all. But I have to agree with you, Tim, because I brought up this issue before. If someone comes up here and makes some comment, and it's okay, it sort of evaporates into thin air, what method do we have that issue would get addressed at the next committee of the whole? There should be some way to funnel that.
Well, we
how
start
did
at
we
the end of the
decide to do
meeting and
that?
ask if you want to bring any items
Right,
up on the
if the
agenda.
issue has merit.
Then it's gonna be the upwardly responsible.
You asked to have it put on the
Agenda.
Okay, well
agenda.
then let's make sure that's
And
crystal
on the-
clear
and
to
on
all
the
the
oth-
board members that they can ask for that to be put on.
And on the flip side of that, when the tennis court people, for example, wanted to spend more than 3 minutes, they went through the process to call in and get on the agenda ahead of time, and we spent quite a bit of time with them.
Right.
And let me just throw there, and I agree with you, I think we vetted it, but, and again, I don't weigh people's personalities on how they, their opinion of what we do, but a couple of them approached me and said, but we'd like to know what you discussed in that advisory council meeting, because, we don't know what you were talking about or how it led to the final decision we had, and, again, Matt, the question is, we can't repeat everything we say, we wouldn't think of it all, and I think between everybody here, and I agree with John, I feel like we tried to share certainly the main points of what it is, but, again, people who it affects, there's always the concern is, I wish I knew everything that was discussed, so
So
just
at
something to think
the
about.
advisory committee, there's 2 people there, listening, and Kevin brings it to the meeting. Now, 5 other people who weren't at that meeting, that's their only taste of that information. At the same time, the public's getting that taste.
Right,
And so, I think that, that's the taste that they're gonna get from those meetings. He's our employee, he has the right to have these meetings, okay? And then he tells the other 5 of us, he reports each, I don't know if it's each committee of the whole or each agenda, he reports what went on in
Right.
those, if there were any. So I don't really know that there's another way to get that information out. If 5 board members are hearing it at this table or upstairs at that table, that I don't see the issue there of them not getting that information. They're getting the information live at the same time 5 board members are getting that information.
What I've been told by people is they said, we've elected you to represent us. We shouldn't have to micromanage you, so we shouldn't have to come and tell you I want to hear you discuss it. And that's what we're sitting here. We're sitting here saying, until we get enough people come and tell us, I want to hear you talk about, I want to hear all the aspects, and the tennis courts was a great decision, the stadium will be another one. When we did the renovation, every nook and cranny had to be discussed in public. And we shouldn't have to ask everybody who voted for us to come here and say, I want to hear you talk about it. We all listen to the TV programs where they argue about the political analysis, or after the president's speech, they talk about it on TV, and you hear it, and they said this, they said that, and you may agree or disagree, but it's the conversation that people want to hear us have, because we're spending their money.
Well, then we can have it at the committee of the whole.
All right, so what I'm hearing right now, just from general consensus from the board, is let's keep with the advisory, superintendent
You
advisory
can't
council.
make that decision.
Excuse me, I'm saying what I'm hearing, all right, please? That the board committee should be not decided on tonight. Keep the current system that we have in place right now, and make sure that we're vetting it out on the committee of the whole, to make sure that it comes out, and also find a way where, if people want to come and see the meeting, that they can see the meeting or wherever.
I guess there'd be one caveat. Now that it's perfectly clear Kevin's got to decide and Ed's here and Dan's gone, I presume the superintendent is going to rethink who's on the councils, and he'll let us know who we chose to be the members of
Right,
this council.
that's got to be crystal clear
That
that
it's his,
it's totally, Matt, no one has any influence on that. Well, I guess you could lobby Kevin, I'm really interested, right? But Matt isn't making the appointments.
That's right, Kevin is.